Hello again, Syracuse sports fans. We're back. It's Brent Axe. It's Syracuse Sports. It's presented by Crouse Health, the official healthcare partner for SU Athletics. We're talking some Cruton today. We sent a correspondent to the HoopHall Classic. Connor Pignatello is his name, and you may recognize him. He covered Syracuse women's basketball for syracuse.com last year, wrote for the Daily Orange, and boy, he did a terrific job cranking out stories, cranking out content, following a current Syracuse commitment, Donnie Freeman, 6'9" forward, who I think could help out this year's team had he been on it. And something Adrian Autry said about Donnie Freeman, you're going to hear Connor discuss, really interesting and a hole he could fill for the Orange next season. Some future Orange commits, perhaps, Kiyan Anthony amongst them at the HoopHall Classic. Connor was there, covered it all. We discussed a couple of women's basketball things as well with Connor. He covered the women's team as mentioned, so he has kind of seen the rise of this team and Dyaisha Fair just passing 3,000 points and what that means and how Felicia Leggett-Jack has built up this women's basketball program as well. So looking forward to some good, meaty Cruton talk from Connor. But before we get to that, let me remind you, friends, that come on in. You want to join the club, right? And that is Syracuse Sports Insiders, a text club in which you text me, I text you, breaking news, information, opinions, first from me to you. Anything you guys want to ask me, always open for discussion. Plus, you get priority on this podcast and our Syracuse basketball postgame shows. Here's how you join. Just text the word orange to 315-847-3895. That's all you got to do. And then direct access to me. Cool thing is you could try it free for 2 weeks. It's just $3.99 a month after that. We would love for you to be part of the club. Come on in. You don't even have to take your shoes off. So check it out, Syracuse Sports Insiders, 315-847-3895. Text the word orange. You'll get a sign-up link, and off you go, friends. The Syracuse Sports Insider community growing by the day. We would love for you to be a part of it, including in which when I knew I was going to do this podcast with Connor, sent a text to our Syracuse Sports Insiders. What do you guys want to know about Syracuse football recruiting, Syracuse basketball recruiting, I should say, in this case, but Syracuse football recruiting always on the table as well, and something we'll be talking about certainly more in the future with the fever pitch that is surrounding Syracuse football at this point. But I sent the text, and you guys helped shape this conversation with Connor Pignatello. If you missed my podcast with John Rothstein, CBS Sports, College Basketball Insider, We Sleep in May. Check that out. Make sure you subscribe on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, so you don't miss an episode of Syracuse Sports and our Syracuse basketball postgame shows. Let's talk about the future of Syracuse basketball with Connor Pignatello. So Connor, fresh off the Mass Pike from the HoopHall Classic in Springfield. And boy, you wrote a lot of great stuff for us on syracuse.com, Connor. It was just a content factory for all the recruiting geeks out there looking to hear about certainly some future Orange that we know are committed. For the fans listening and watching, hopefully some future Orange that will commit. And just a lot of great basketball. Feels like that was a great event to drop in on and see what was cooking.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic event. I mean, even besides the Syracuse angle, 18 of the top 25 teams in the country were there. All 10 of the top prospects this year were there. The number one guy in 2025 was there. The number one guy in 2026 was there. It was just an all-star showcase of talent. And got to see some Syracuse guys as well. Saw Donnie play. Had a really nice game in his first game. Scored 19 points, grabbed 7 boards. He really, when you look at him, when you want a modern 4 in the NBA or in the college game, he is what you just take one look at him and you're like, all right, this is the guy. He's still a little bit slight. Told me that he entered IMG at 194 pounds, but they have a team nutritionist who travels with the team. They have an elite college level strength and conditioning program. Now he's up to about 205, he told me. So he's definitely been adding strength. He still is a little bit slight, but you can tell that his frame is going to fill out a little bit more. He showed pretty impressive, honestly, ball handling skills for someone his size at 6'9" or so. Had a couple really nice baseline drives, had some nice moves in the post. He showed his range from the 3-point line, there was one sequence that really impressed me with him where grabbed a rebound, dished it to his point guard. They went on the fast break. His point guard went up, set a screen for him, and then he hit a three at the top of the point. Then on the other end, he blocked a shot that led to a turnover for another run out for his team. So
that'll do.
Adrian Autry told me about how they think he can help with them in the fast break, and he showed that ability there.
So, Connor, Donnie Freeman's the big name, of course, who we're talking about, and he's one of those guys that as soon as you watch him, and you saw him in person, I have not seen him in person. I've seen the films, I've seen the highlight tapes, but you got to be careful with those, right? But still, even if you see about a minute clip on wherever you see it, YouTube, social media, whatever the case may be, I think you watch that and you say, yeah, he'll do, right? Yeah. But he's still raw. He's still raw, but he's one of those guys that's like, okay, like, just get him on the court and let Autry and his staff coach him for a year, and it's going to work out. So I want to get your perspective on seeing him in person, and then you had an opportunity at that HoopHall Classic to talk to Adrian Autry. I thought it had a really interesting quote about Donnie Freeman that basically says, yeah, we could use him right now.
Yeah, so there was a bunch of SU coaches in attendance at the game. Talked with Adrian Autry for a couple minutes, talked with him about Donnie. He was saying, yeah, we could use him right now, honestly. We could use him. He could stretch the floor for us. We need someone with his sort of versatility, with his ability to score inside, outside, and said, hey, we need his outside shooting. We need his shooting right now, is what he told me.
It's incredible to hear him say that. And I like the honesty, because that's what's missing. You watch this team at this point.
Yeah.
You know, and we're speaking before Syracuse plays Pittsburgh. So who knows, maybe somebody went off and started to alleviate this issue, but Syracuse just doesn't have consistent 3-point shooting. They don't have that consistent inside presence that he would bring at that position. And you brought up how he's just a prototypical 4 in the NBA right now. So I think Syracuse fans, you're always excited about recruits and you always think the best of recruits, but seeing that this team is, you know, halfway through their season and is missing that element, to know that it's on the way. It's kind of like the football team at this point, Connor. Like Fran Brown is already starting to show, like, here are the guys that are going to replace or in some case enhance positions. And I think Syracuse fans are looking at Donnie as that type of guy. But we did mention it. He is kind of raw. So what do you think are the elements of his game, having seen him now, that he's going to have, that people watching and he is going to have to be patient with, that he's going to have to develop once he gets into college?
Yeah, so I actually talked with Adrian Autry about this as well. And he was saying that I'm looking for him to, you know, not only improve on his motor and his body, which are, you know, obvious things, but his rebounding is one thing he especially noted to me. He's saying that, you know, a guy his size, when you're just playing at your hometown high school and you can just grab rebounds because you're just that big and that's what you do. But when you get to that next level and you start playing against high level competition like Donnie is at IMG, I mean, the highest level of competition with a national schedule, you need to start improving on your rebounding skills. You need to start getting better at that. And Donnie said that that's something that he's really been working on at IMG, that the coaches have been trusting him to expand his game. Talked to me also about, you know, how he's hearing from SU coaches, from SU assistants, especially Brandon Strawn, who's also from the DMV area. And, you know, it's not all positive feedback. It's not all negative feedback. It's a mix of both. It's a mix of encouragement. Hey, I saw your game today. I thought you did really well. And a mix of constructive criticism. He said, you know, one game I didn't have any rebounds in the first half. And Brendan texted me and said, hey, you need to pick that up. You can't have halves like that. You need to be able to do that. And Autry also said, you know, rebounding for a guy like him is, if you're having a bad shooting night, if you can't score the basketball one day, it's not working for you. You can rebound, and that's what will help you stay on the floor.
So Donnie Freeman was the standout, but there's certainly some other Syracuse targets that were there in Springfield. And a name that intrigues me is Jordan Smith Jr., who is a 2026 target. And by the way, side note, every time I say that now, when you're looking a couple of years ahead, like, we're in the future. Like, you know, when I was a kid and I'm watching, you know, Back to the Future, and that movie took place when they went to the future in 2015, and we're 10 years past that. It still freaks me out to say 2026, but they're looking at 2026, and Jordan Smith Jr., Connor, he's a 5-star point guard. He was a player of the game for one of these matchups at the HoopHall Classic. And as he, I believe, told you and has said, Syracuse is coming at him hard right now. So give us kind of the breakdown of what you saw from his game and kind of where Syracuse is at in terms of recruiting him from what you know.
Yeah, so he plays for Paul VI, which is one of the big Catholic school programs in the DMV area. I mean, they just churn out top Division I guys every year. But he's a sophomore, but he started the game. He played almost the entire game in a top 5 matchup between Paul VI and Christopher Columbus, which has the 2 Richardson brothers and the 2 Boozer twins. So he played up to the level of some of the best seniors in the country as a sophomore. Just first off, he was really impressive. Really liked his guard skills. He talked to me about how he likes watching Judah Mintz and JJ Starling play. He really likes how Syracuse uses their guards. He compared JJ Starling to Kawhi Leonard. He said he really likes that part of his game. He likes his defense. He likes his versatility. And yeah, he told me that he wants to get up to SU for a visit, hopefully this summer. He told me that Syracuse has really been recruiting him hard. They're telling him, hey, you can come here. You can be the next great Syracuse guard. You can go to the league. You can excel in the league. So he seems really interested in Syracuse. I mean, there are also a lot of schools interested in him, being such a talented guy. Pretty sure he's a top 20 player in the ESPN rankings for the 26 class. So he is definitely one to watch over the next couple of years.
And him noting that he sees the freedom that a Judah Mintz has, and somewhat JJ Starling, in particular Judah, because you hand the keys to a player, there's ups and downs with that. Have been times this year, certainly Syracuse fans who said, hey, Judah, like, maybe that's a little too much, or 2-3 possessions in a row where, just in this past game against North Carolina, again, we're recording this before Syracuse played Pittsburgh, against North Carolina, he's taken on 3 defenders. And it's like, hey, wait, you can't do that. Like that's Baycott in the middle there. These are really good guys. But it makes me think of that because these players notice that. And that's the balance you have as a coach. Like for Autry to say, you could be the next guard, you'll have the keys to the offense, you got to hold up to that. And Syracuse certainly offers the freedom to players at that position to come in and do that for sure. So there's another intriguing prospect that was there. Connor, who are some of the other names, both connected to Syracuse or other guys that just stood out to you that Syracuse may get in on that you saw or had the opportunity to talk with?
Yeah, so just list off a couple guys and then talk about them. So definitely Kiyan Anthony. That's the obvious connection. Carmelo Anthony's son. He plays for Long Island Lutheran. His teammate also, Nigel James. They're kind of backcourt partners in the Lehigh offense defense they run there. And both of them are going to be coming up for Syracuse's game versus Miami on January 20th. They're coming up also with Sadiq White, who's another player Syracuse has offered. He's from North Carolina, Charlotte area. So those are all 2025 4-star guys. Then also some other guys Syracuse is looking at. Jerry Easter II out of La Lumiere. So he's the shooting guard at La Lumiere, played really well in both of his games. I watched his first game. He won player of the game, showed some real nice bounce, definitely. He hasn't met JJ Starling, but as people know, JJ Starling went to La Lumiere for the final 2 years of his high school career. So he was saying that, if JJ can say he likes Syracuse, like he's obviously not lying about it. Like,
right.
And he also
That's
has,
important.
yeah. So Jerry's father is an AAU coach, and he's good friends with SU legend Derek Coleman. Said that Derek Coleman kind of thinks of Jerry II as a nephew. So Jerry said he'd definitely like to come up for a visit soon, and he's very interested in Syracuse. Some other guys that Syracuse is looking at, Derek Dixon. He won player of the game in his game for Gonzaga High School. And he really excelled, honestly. Syracuse is looking at him. He's a combo guard, 4-star, class of 2025. But yeah, overall, there was a lot of recruits Syracuse was looking at. I have to say that there was mostly seemed like a focus to me on guards from the DMV area. A lot of them noted that Brendan Strawn, who's from that area, has been their point of contact. And it seems like Syracuse is really focusing on those guys. Donnie Freeman is from the DMV area. So they really seem like they're focusing in on those type of players.
That has been a well that Syracuse has dipped into many times. When Strawn was hired, you could see the connection there. Autry, before he got into the assistant coach ranks at Syracuse, was at Virginia Tech, recruited that area, knows that area. That is such a stronghold that Syracuse goes to. I want to circle back, though, a little bit on Kiyan Anthony, of course. And I think it's the same thing almost with Bronny James. You say to yourself, okay, how good are these guys? Because when you have that shadow around their fathers and the legends that they are at the NBA level, like sometimes maybe your judgment can get clouded a little bit. I think Syracuse fans will be over the moon. And I believe he told you March 7th, his birthday, is when he's going to announce, and he's going to put out, who his finalists are, right? I think Syracuse fans have kind of gotten to the point, Connor, where if he doesn't commit to Syracuse, I don't know if you know this, but social media can get a little rough sometimes. I think they're going to be crestfallen if he doesn't. But he's got to go where he wants to go and be comfortable there. And I think for the most part, actually, people will understand that. But I got to go back to this question. How good is he?
Yeah. So to be honest, in his 2 games for Long Island Lutheran this weekend, he really struggled. Shot 2 of 15 from the floor. Watched his first game. He went 1 of 8 from 3, 1 of 10 from the field, I believe. Actually, he had a layup late, so 2 of 10. So yeah, really struggled, but he did show off a deep shooting range. He did play. He is on a Long Island Lutheran team that has multiple other top players. 5-star VJ Edgecombe is their best player this year. He just committed to Baylor over the weekend, and he's ranked 5th in the class. So Kiyan is definitely playing a complementary role there. Spent a lot of time out on the 3-point line, shot a lot of threes. Definitely seen in previous games of his and highlight tapes the range he has shown, and he definitely thinks of himself as a shooter. But to be honest, this weekend he did struggle, but he is also a junior. He's been rising in the rankings. He is still a little bit raw. He's got to work on a couple other parts of his game, but I think overall, he talked to me about his relationship with Syracuse, what he did on his visit. He went to varsity with his dad, went to a couple other old spots with his dad on campus, went out with the team that night. And he said he doesn't miss a Syracuse game. He watches all of the games. When Autry was an assistant, he had a great relationship with him. He called Autry an uncle. And so he has a great relationship with Syracuse, and he's playing on a top 5 team in the country that, to be honest, did really struggle this weekend, lost both of their games. So Lou High, they play a national schedule. There are a lot of opportunities for Kiyan to get more experience. It is his first year with the school. He transferred over from Christ the King before this year. So I think, him just getting more in the swing of things will really help him. To say again, it's his first year with a new school. He's adjusting to all new players. So it's going to take some time for those kinks to get ironed out.
Connor, switching gears a little bit to women's basketball. I want to get your take on Dyaisha Fair and the Syracuse women's basketball team, which you covered up close last year when you were writing for the Daily Orange. But you also wrote a great piece for syracuse.com looking back on Breanna Stewart. I've heard of Stewie. And of course, her Central New York connections. But before she went on to dominate at UConn and become, one of the best players in the world, WNBA MVP, she was at that HoopHall Classic, and you had a chance to talk to her and some old teammates. It's people that had went up against her in 2012. And what was your takeaway from getting to talk to Stewie and some people about that tournament and kind of how it's come full circle to where she is now?
Yeah, so Breanna Stewart came to HoopHall back in 2012. At the time, she was the #1 prospect in the country. She had already committed to UConn. She had already dunked. She was basically the best player in the country for sure. CNS had won the state title the year before. They went on later that year to repeat as state champions. And yeah, she came to HoopHall, played one of the local teams, West Springfield. So yeah, I got a chance to talk with Stewie from her place in Spain, where she currently lives in the off season with her wife and 2 little kids. It was kind of funny. She had to mute the Zoom a couple times to deal with some screaming toddlers, but overall, it was a good conversation. It was cool to hear her thoughts on the game. And then I also talked with 5 of the players on the West Springfield team that she played against, and a couple of the coaches from West Springfield, and they were awestruck is one word to describe it. One player told me she was honored to get her shot blocked by Breanna Stewart.
There you go.
So they and also just over the years, when they've reflected, their fun facts are always, in high school I played against Breanna Stewart, or in high school I guarded Breanna Stewart, or the player so at the Hoop Hall, they give player of the game awards to players on both teams. And the player of the game for the West Springfield team told me that, she was saying, "Oh, I won player of the game. Like, am I going to UConn too?" Like, so it was just a really fun story. Really cool to talk with those players on kind of their brush with greatness and how they've reflected on over the years as Stewie has gone on to UConn, won 4 titles there, 4 most outstanding player of the Final Fours. Now in the WNBA, she's won 2 titles, 2 MVPs, and is on track to be one of the greatest women's basketball players of all time. So just for these players to, have that one little blip on the radar, play against her, and for her, playing at the HoopHall Classic, she really enjoyed the environment. She talked to me about how, I think I had been to the Hoop Hall before, and I think I had been since, but, every time I go there, it's just so special to see the greatest players in the game enshrined there. So she had a really good experience. The 2 teams also went out for pizza afterwards and were able to share some laughs. CNS crushed West Springfield 60-20, but, afterwards, the West Springfield players were saying, on the court, she was a god, but when we got pizza, you can't eat pizza differently than anyone else. So
that's right. A little relatable.
We were all just chatting, and they said she was humble, just like a regular kid, a normal kid. Talked with the CNS coaches, and they were saying, "Hey, we understand this is crazy right now with our national schedule, and having to get PTO to go take her to a tournament in California, but we understand that this is just a great moment, and we're just trying to soak it in." So yeah, overall, it was great to talk with Stewie. Great to hear about the time she played at Hoop Hall.
Yeah, great article there. You guys should check it out on syracuse.com. One more thing, Connor, from one of the greatest players on the planet to somebody who is rising up the ranks amongst the greats, not only in Syracuse history, but in all of college basketball, and that's Dyaisha Fair, who just recently passed the 3,000 point mark, and that's a combination between Buffalo and Syracuse, of course, but she has made such an impact on Syracuse basketball in just a couple of seasons, playing under Felicia Legette-Jack, who she played with at Buffalo, of course. When you covered this team a year ago, and they got right on the doorstep of making the tournament, it feels like they've already taken a big step to the point where if they don't make the tournament this year, I think you can mark that a disappointment. Like, I think they have gotten I know there's a lot of basketball yet to be played, and they have a big game against Florida State this week and some opportunities here in the ACC. But it just feels like that's the natural next step. They got so close a year ago. When you have a dynamic player like Fair, you've got to ride that as far as you can go here. But what did you see last year with this team kind of planting the seeds of what we think could end up being a pretty special season if it keeps going down this road for this team?
Yeah, so last year covered the team as the beat reporter for syracuse.com. And it was, no one really knew what to expect at the beginning of the year. I mean, they're coming off a year with an interim head coach, pretty much an entirely new roster, an entirely new coaching staff, 5 transfers from Buffalo. Yeah, no one really knew what to expect, but I have to say they probably surpassed expectations. We're, like you said, right on the doorstep into getting into the NCAA tournament. I remember talking with some national analysts right before the tournament, and they were saying, we feel like Syracuse is really on the bubble, and if they win one game in the ACC tournament, they'll probably get in. Unfortunately, they did lose that first round game in the ACC tournament and ended up playing in the NIT. But I have to say, overall, that the seeds were planted, like you said. Dyaisha Fair is just a player that can just take over a game. I mean, there's multiple games I covered last year where, she might have been quiet. She might have not done much for the first 3 quarters, but one game, I remember she scored like 20 points in the 4th quarter, completely took over the game, hit 5 threes, and led Syracuse to a win. So with a player like that who is just such, I hate to use the cliche term like an X factor, but she really is an X factor. I mean, almost every team in the country does not have a player like Dyaisha Fair. She is just an unbelievable scorer of the ball, and really her bond with Felicia Legette-Jack is what separates it. Now in her 5th year playing for the only college coach she's ever known. Wrote a really in-depth feature about her and Felicia's relationship last year, and she called her mom away from home. Felicia has really been a motherly figure to her. And this is something that Dyaisha has said, Felicia has said, Felicia's mom has said, Felicia's dad has said, that they all feel like Felicia is honestly kind of part of the Fair family. There was one night at Buffalo where the power went out, the heat went out at Dyaisha's apartment, and she went and Felicia let her sleep at her own house. So you're saying, no, you're not staying in a hotel. You're staying with me. So that's the sort of relationship they had multiple times last year. Felicia said, if we can get Dyaisha to come back, we can make a Final Four. And I truly believe that. And Syracuse this year has made some definite strides. That the partnership between Woolley and Fair last year was excellent. It's continued to be excellent. And Alyssa Latham has really added a lot to that team. Talked with her when she committed last summer about how excited she was to get to Syracuse, and she has been better than advertised. They were really missing that a type of player like her inside last year. Obviously with the departure of Dariana Lewis, who finished third in the ACC in rebounding, they really had a hole to fill there. Asia Strong leaving as well. So they really needed a player like Alyssa Latham, and she's been great for the Orange.
Yeah, with Fair, I think you bring up a great point in that she can be quiet for 3 quarters, then take over in a fourth quarter.
Yeah.
It happened in her game where she got 3,000 points. She was actually kind of quiet. And then that fourth quarter came, and there's just something about when it's prime time and she steps up. But what I feel like this team has now, and Latham, like you said, has been one of the best freshmen in the league. She has been better than advertised and has just added this element. Fair can and will take over games, but I feel like this team, Connor, that they've put together now, it feels like she doesn't have to, right? Mm-hmm. There's more support there. Mm-hmm. You do your thing, you go out and do your Dyaisha thing, and we're gonna sit back and watch that. But you said Woolley has developed into a great player, and it just feels like there's enough support. It's almost like I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, that Josh Allen's got a running game now, okay?
Yeah.
And that's big. That it's not all on his shoulders. When it counts, you want the ball in his hands, and that's the same thing with Fair. But it feels like there's just enough support now that there's just going to be days when you can't count on her, and a Woolley can step up or a Latham can step, and it just feels like you kind of go down the ladder a little bit more, and this is a well-rounded team.
Yeah, 100%. Last year, there definitely were a couple games where it felt like if Fair wasn't getting the ball late in the game, like they might not score. And it really felt a lot of times like she was carrying the offense. And now totally agree, not having to rely on her as much, having more options. Woolley, I just have to say again, and she's really coming into her own as a player. Great shooter, great passer, great defender. And her chemistry with Dyaisha coming over from Buffalo, now playing in their third year together. I know last year she had some issues kind of getting acclimated. She had surgery. She got sick for a while. She had a concussion. And so all of those things kind of serve to, hinder her development a little bit and getting that chemistry with Dyaisha. But, now in year 3 together, they're a great partnership.
Connor, great stuff, man. I really enjoyed reading what you had from the HoopHall, and I know there's more to come there, more interesting recruiting nuggets to follow here. Appreciate you digging in and doing that work for us there in Springfield, and appreciate your perspective on all the recruiting things that you saw there and where it's going to go for Syracuse here. Thanks for hopping on with us, my friend. We'll do it again down the road, but appreciate your time today.
All right. My pleasure, Brent.
Hey, thanks again to Connor for joining us. Terrific insight there on a future Orange commit and perhaps some other future Orange commits from the HoopHall Classic in Springfield, home of the Basketball Hall of Fame. Thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders. Come on in. Join the cool kids texting club. Just text the word orange to 315-847-3895. We would love to have you a part of the Syracuse Sports Insider community. Your texts, priority on this podcast. And don't forget our next post-game show coming your way after Syracuse takes on Miami at the JMA Wireless Dome on Saturday afternoon. Got some other stuff we're cooking up for you here on Syracuse Sports, guys. Make sure you're subscribed. Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Hit the like button, the follow button, the thumbs up button, whatever you have to do to stay in touch. But, of course, you listen when you want, on demand. We're cooking up some good stuff for you here, so hang in there, my friends. A lot more to come. But thank you so much for listening and watching today. It's been presented by Crouse Health, the official healthcare partner for SU Athletics. We will talk to you next time, guys.